Anthony, I love the setup there. One thing, we're actually at Matagorda Beach right now. Give you a look outside our glass right here, just to give you an idea. No storm surge that we're seeing yet, but I love how you set that up because it's really important for people at home. I think sometimes they see us out here and they think we're just in big Tonka trucks playing around. That's not the case. There are a lot of conversations and planning and logistics that go into, picking spots strategically and making sure that we're safe, because there's no point for us being out here to bring these images to Houston and to Southeast Texas and to people around the country if we're not safe. So I want to make sure that's really clear. I mean, literally, Anthony and I just talked on the phone about 30 minutes ago talking about storm surge. How much? When is it going to hit? My photographer, photojournalist Oscar Chavez and I, you can't see him in the shot here, but we drove around. We looked at our escape routes. We looked at planning, timing, how much time do we have? These are all things that if you do stay, it's not advisable. If there's an evacuation order, even voluntarily, you should move out, right? But those are things that you should all take into consideration. And that's something that, we take into consideration whenever we're dropped into these areas like that, and, down to looking at the construction of a home. Anthony, it's such an important part of making sure that you're safe, because I really want to stress, and I hate to say it because it's such a freaky thing to say, but in these situations, there's oftentimes no one's able to come and help you if you find yourself in dire straits, and that's the reality of it, because our first responders also need to be safe. So it's a very, very, very critical and very important that you remain safe and you plan and put yourself in the best position that you can. We are on Beach Drive. My rant is over. I don't apologize. There's important information that we convey here. So driving Beach Drive, we're actually heading away from the Gulf of Mexico, Colorado River on our left. And to our right would be, I believe, Matagorda Bay, if I'm not mistaken. It's a little hard to tell at night. But as you can see, there's not a lot. Well, I guess from that camera, you really can't see a whole heck of a lot. Let me turn off my top light here. That gives you a better view from, this is what regular car lights would look like. But whenever we flip on some extra lighting for you and bring in a better camera a little bit down closer to the road, you can kind of see, looking for storm surge here, there is water to our left and to our right, but it's not covering the road yet. So that's a good sign in terms of storm surge, especially whenever values in this area forecasted to be upwards of 6-7 feet towards the high end. The good news is, as I was looking at the tide charts earlier, because that is one of the most important things that you can look at, is that we should be seeing things at a lower tide. So when you think of like a Hurricane Ian in Southwest Florida, that hit really at the worst time, because they had, historic storm surge that came in at high tide, and it just really adds insult to injury. So I believe that we should be seeing the peak of this in this area, Matagorda Bay area, towards the lower of the tides. That's the best news. But once again, we should be seeing around 6 or so feet of storm surge. I want to see, Oscar, can we take a right? If there's a right, let's take a right and see what's down here. We're going to go on a little adventure if we have the time, just to kind of see what all is going on down here. It looks like this is just a street. So you got to get a good view here. I'm going to flip off this light because I don't want to be rude to our other drivers here. But it looks like we're just heading down a street here to see what's going on. I don't really see a whole lot flipping that light back on. Yeah, it's just the water to our left, water to our right. But I mean, this is where storm surge would typically be. It would cover these roads that are surrounded by water on all sides, but we're not really seeing that here. But I'll tell you what, we have now turned, our direction is going due east directly almost, and we are feeling that wind. I think you can see. Oscar, do you mind pulling up and stopping right here next to one of these little trees here? I'm sure we'll find another one, but just to kind of give you a good gauge, if you will, of what the wind looks like and what we're dealing with here. Not incredible wind. I think we're definitely in that tropical storm force wind range. I have a little wind gauge that can give us some readings, but obviously it doesn't work if we're moving in a vehicle. But as for the sights and sounds, it's really just wind-driven rain at this point, which, in this area we're kind of used to with some of those severe thunderstorms that might move through this area. We saw with the derecho and whatnot, but this is more of a wind-driven rain situation out here currently. I mean, you can see these sides of the streets out here are dang near bone dry. Even the little gullies that are made to handle water aren't even really filled up yet. I'm not saying that's going to be the case for the entire night. So if you're watching this in the Matagorda area or in those areas that are forecast to see higher storm surge, I wouldn't get too comfortable because I do think things will be changing here. But as for right now, I would say the biggest thing is those winds. If it catches you the wrong way, it could definitely put you on your rear end if you're not careful. I think it's already happened to us a couple times here. But once again, we're going to be keeping an eye on this. This is an area, if you're watching, take caution. This is the chance to heed. If you're looking to get out and you're not sure, this would be the opportunity to do so. You know, your clock is really getting close to that midnight hour where it's just going to be more dangerous for you to try to evacuate than it would be for you to shelter in place. So eventually you'll get to that point. So if you're feeling a little uneasy about this, best bet is to get to higher and drier ground, and now is the time to do so. So with that in mind, we're going to send it back to y'all in Houston in the studio. We're out here in Matagorda, so we'll be checking in with you here in just a little bit. Guys? That's a great question, because Oscar and I had this conversation on the way in, and as we were driving around. I mean, literally, it's not made up. We were plotting our own escape routes if we had to, timing it. Hey, if we really had to haul, you know what, out of here, how long would it take us to get to where we need to go? That's a legitimate conversation that we had, and timed it out. And the one thing we were looking for is, you know, Oscar, there's not a lot of lights on in these homes. So I think that's a good sign. Oh, let's pull up to this sign right here, no pun intended. Can you get a good view of them kind of wiggling around? Let me see if I turn off this bright light. You might get a little bit of a better view as the wind comes through. Yeah, you can see the reflection from the signs there. So that the wind moving those signs around pretty good. But the good news is we're not seeing too much water come up. And this is actually a beach access. So let's take a ride up here as I answer your question, Keith. A little bit of a bonus time here. But yeah, for the most part, no, we haven't seen a lot. We've seen a couple other media crews out here, but that's pretty much it. And we'll slowly approach this just to give you a good idea. This is a beach access. Water is flowing out towards the Gulf. I don't know if you guys can really get a good view from here, what that looks like. But I wouldn't want to drive on this any further, I don't think. But I do see the waves crashing off there in the distance. Yeah, this camera view does give you a good look. Things still look relatively calm. I don't know if you guys can see that back in the studio, but things are still looking relatively calm out here. But to answer your question, Keith, in the long form way, yeah, I think people are really abiding by that and taking those cautions, which is really, really good to see. We have seen very far and few vehicles on the road. Stopped at the gas station, there wasn't really that many people there, and there's not a lot of lights on at home. So that's a good indication that a lot of people have said, I'm not going to risk it this time around.